Montana Territory. June of 1877, the wind rolled low over the dry grasslands near Fort Benton, carrying dust and something quiet or something broken. Noah Newton had not spoken more than 10 words to anyone in the past 3 days. He had no reason to. His work was with horses, and they never asked for conversation. At 32, he had earned himself a stretch of land no one else wanted, tucked between hard hills and harder memories. The war had taken his older brother. Love had taken his fiancée, packed her off to California with a man who could offer laughter and a house without ghosts. Noah stopped hoping after that, but hope was a stupid thing. It crept in even when you thought you had locked every door. He was repairing the rail on the south pasture fence when he heard the wheels. A wagon, slow and limping, axle groaning like it had been dragged across half the territory. Noah stood, brush sticking to his shirt, and saw it coming down the trail that cut near his land. 1 horse, 1 woman, and a baby in her arms. She pulled the wagon to a stop when she saw him. Her dress was dusty, bonnet crooked. The baby, maybe 8 or 9 months old, was pressed to her chest, fussing softly, and yet she smiled. "You own this land?" she asked. He nodded. "All the way to the ridge." She looked down at her wagon, then back up at him. "I am not asking for much, just water, maybe a place to rest the horse. We will move on by morning." Noah's eyes flicked to the child. "That baby cannot sleep in a wagon tonight." The woman looked tired, but her spine was straight. "We have before, we will again." "Not here, you will not," he said, already tossing the hammer into the bucket and walking toward her. "You will stay the night, I have space." She hesitated, studying him. "That is kind, but not kindness," he said, reaching for the reins. "Just decent." She let him guide the horse toward the barn. "I am Helena Ward, Noah Newton." The baby let out a small cry, and she bounced him gently, whispering something quiet and sweet. Noah watched her hands, steady, patient. He had not seen hands like that in a long time. Inside the cabin, he cleared the extra cot and laid fresh blankets. The place was simple. Stone hearth, rough-hewn table, 2 chairs, and a bed pushed against the wall. He gave her space, tending to the horse until the sun dipped behind the hills. When he came back in, she was sitting on the cot, baby asleep in her lap, eyes closed like she was trying to hold herself together with silence. "Boy?" he asked, nodding at the baby. "Andrew," she said without opening her eyes. "He is 9 months." Noah crouched to the fire, tossing in a few logs. "You headed somewhere?" She shook her head. "Was headed to my cousin's in Billings. He died 2 weeks ago. Fever took the whole household." Noah turned sharply. "You were there." "I stayed in the barn. They told me not to come in. I listened." Her voice cracked. "Then I ran out of food. So I kept going." He nodded slowly. "Where is his father?" "Dead. Cattle raid near Abilene last spring. I was married to a ranch hand. Not much of a marriage, but it gave me the boy." Noah did not ask more. He brought her bread, salted pork, and coffee. She ate slowly, careful not to wake Andrew. Noah sat across from her, elbows on the table. "You travel alone." "I did not mean to. My sister was with me. She died back in Kansas. Birth was hard," Helena said, voice low. "She did not make it. I took the boy." Noah's jaw tightened. "You are not his mother." "I am now," she said. "He knows no one else." The firelight flickered against her face, catching the edges of something tired and tender. She did not cry, but she looked like she had before. Noah stood and cleared the plates. "You can stay through tomorrow," he said. "Longer if you need." "No one's going to come asking." She looked up at him. "Why are you doing this?" Noah paused. "Because you smiled." She blinked. He added, "And you have a baby. That counts for something." That night he laid in bed, listening to the quiet sounds of Helena settling the boy into sleep. She hummed something faint, a tune he did not know, but it stayed with him longer than he expected. He stared at the ceiling, wondering when his cabin had last felt like a place someone could sing in. By morning, Andrew was perched on Noah's knee, grabbing at the buttons on his shirt. Helena was washing dishes, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She watched them, and something warm passed between them, not spoken, not asked for. Just there. "You are good with him," she said. Noah looked down at the baby. "I never had much reason to be." "What changed?" He looked at her, and the words came out before he could think twice. "You walked in with a baby and a smile." Helena looked away, cheeks coloring. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," he said. She laughed then, soft and real. The sound knocked something loose in his chest. Later that day, he showed her the garden behind the house, the hens, the creek that ran cold and clear along the edge of the property. She followed beside him, Andrew strapped in a sling across her chest, her hand occasionally brushing his arm as they walked the narrow path through the grass. By dusk, she was sitting on the porch steps, Andrew asleep against her shoulder. Noah brought her a cup of water, and she took it with a quiet thank you. "You planning to keep going?" he asked. She looked out toward the hills. "I do not know. I came hoping for family. Seems I found none." "You found land," he said, "and room to breathe. And a man who does not talk much," she teased. He glanced at her. "I talk when it matters." She smiled again, tired but soft. "It is funny. I thought I was done hoping." "So did I," he said. Their eyes met, and neither looked away. That night, the wind came down off the hills again, but this time, the cabin did not creak alone. The next morning, Helena swept the cabin floor while Andrew batted at a wooden spoon on a folded quilt near the hearth. His laughter came in short, delighted bursts, and Noah heard it through the open barn door as he brushed down the bay mare. It was a sound that didn't belong to his world, and yet it didn't jar him the way he might have expected. It fit, somehow. When he came in, Helena straightened and tucked a stray curl behind her ear. "I hope you don't mind. I figured I owed you something for last night." "You don't," he said, setting his hat on the peg by the door. "But I won't stop you," she smiled, and this time it stayed a moment longer. Noah took a tin of nails to the table, sorting them by length. "You ever do any mending?" "I've patched more trousers than I care to count," she said, kneeling to lift Andrew onto her hip. "Why?" He nodded toward a bundle near the stove. "Saddle blankets gone to threads. If you've got the hand for it, I'll trade you for eggs and flour." She laid Andrew back down with a kiss to his cheek. "You've got yourself a deal." They worked in the same room without speaking for a long while. His hands moved through the nails with quiet purpose, hers threaded needle through wool with careful fingers. The midday light shifted across the floorboards, and outside, the hens scraped through dry earth. It was the kind of day that didn't feel like it needed filling. Helena broke the silence. "You ever think about leaving this place?" He didn't look up. "No. Not once. I've already buried too many things here. Seems wrong to walk away." She paused, eyes on her stitching. "I used to think the only way forward was to run. But I ran for 2 years and all I got was tired." He finally glanced at her. "What makes you stop now?" She looked down at Andrew. "He'll need something steady. I can't keep dragging him behind a wagon." Noah set the last nail into place. "There's room here, not much." "But room," her eyes met his. "You don't even know what I'm like when things get hard. I've seen enough to guess. You could be wrong." "I could," he said, "but I don't think I am." She set the mended blanket aside. "You're not a man used to guessing." "I do it when it matters." Andrew fussed then, and she reached for him, pressing him close. Noah watched the way she held him firm but gentle, and something inside him softened in a way it hadn't in years. After supper, she asked about the hill beyond the pasture. He said there was an old trail that wound through the tall grass and came out at a rock shelf where the wind never stopped. They walked it together as the sun dropped low, Andrew wrapped snug against her chest. At the ridge, she looked out over the valley. It's strange how quiet it is here, like the land's holding its breath. It always does before a storm, he said. Is one coming? He shook his head. Not tonight. They sat on a flat stone, the baby nestled between them. The wind tugged at her skirts, and her hand found the edge of his sleeve, not pulling, just resting there like it belonged. You think you could stand someone else living here? She asked. I think I could stand you. She turned to face him. That wasn't a question. I know. He didn't touch her, not yet, but she leaned toward him just a little and her voice dropped low. I don't know what comes next. I do, he said. She looked at him, really looked this time, and saw the truth of it. Not a promise rushed or spoken out of loneliness, but a steady, quiet knowing, like the land itself had whispered it into his bones. Back at the cabin, she laid Andrew down while Noah poured water into the basin. She washed her hands, dried them on her apron, and turned to him. I'll take the cot again. You don't have to, he said. I know, but I will, he nodded once. I'll see you in the morning. She hesitated at the doorway to the back room. Noah. He looked up from the lamp. Thank you for letting me be here without asking me to be anything else. You already are, he said. You just don't see it yet. And as she stepped into the dim room, the floor creaked behind her like it always had, but this time, it sounded like a house learning how to hold more than one life at once. The rains came 2 days later, not heavy, but steady enough to turn the dust to mud and keep the air smelling of wet sage and pine. Helena stood at the edge of the porch, shawl pulled tight around her shoulders, watching the low clouds drift over the ridge. Andrew slept inside, tucked against a folded quilt, his breath soft and even. Noah stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind him. He carried 2 tin mugs, steam curling up from both. He handed one to her without a word. Thank you, she said, taking it in both hands. He leaned against the post beside her, the wood damp under his sleeve. I never minded the rain before, she said after a while, but it feels different when you don't know if you'll have a roof next week. You've got one now, he said. She looked at him over the rim of her cup. You mean that? I don't say things I don't mean. Helena's gaze returned to the hills. I keep thinking about how fast everything changed. 1 season ago, I was living out of a wagon. Now I know what time the hens lay and how the light moves across your kitchen floor. You make things steadier just by being here. Helena smiled without turning. I've spent most of my life being told I was too much trouble, too quiet, too plain, too stubborn. You're not plain. She blinked, surprised by the certainty in his voice. You're the first woman I've seen who looks like she was born to carry both a child and a storm and not flinch at either, he added. Her fingers tightened around the cup. You don't have to say pretty things, Noah. I'm not. I'm saying true things. She set the cup on the railing, arms crossing loosely. I've been waiting to feel afraid, like this will vanish. Like I'll wake up in the boy and I will be back on the trail. You're not on the trail anymore. Helena turned to face him fully. You're not afraid that this might come apart somehow? I was, for a long time, but you came in and didn't ask for anything but water. And still managed to put everything right without touching a thing. She glanced toward the window, where the shape of Andrew's sleeping form was just visible through the fogged glass. He's the only reason I kept going. I didn't think there'd be more than him and me. There is, Noah said. She stepped closer. Why me, Noah? You could have sent us on, could have kept to yourself. His voice was quiet. Because I saw something in you I hadn't seen in years, not just the strength, the stillness, like you weren't waiting to be saved. Just waiting to rest. Helena's hand rose slowly, brushing his collar where the rain had darkened the fabric. And if I said I don't know how to live in one place anymore, I'd say you already are. Their eyes held, and this time there was no hesitation. Her fingers stayed at his collar and his hand lifted to her waist, not sudden, not rushed, just steady. Inside, Andrew stirred and Helena pulled back with a quiet breath. "I should see to him." Noah nodded, but his hand lingered for a moment before dropping. "We'll talk more when you're ready." She stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind her. Noah stood in the rain a while longer, watching it bead on the porch rail, listening to the sound of a child waking in a house that no longer echoed only with silence. That evening, Helena set a pot of stew on the table: carrots, barley, a bit of salt pork. She didn't ask if he liked it. She just handed him a bowl. Andrew sat on a folded blanket beside the hearth, gnawing on a strip of cloth Helena had knotted for teething. "I used to be a dressmaker," she said as they ate, "back in Independence before I married. My hands haven't forgotten, but they're slower now. Think you'd ever take it up again, maybe?" She stirred her spoon through the broth. "Town's too far for shop work, but mending, maybe, for neighbors." "If I'm staying." "You are," he said. "If you want to be." Her eyes lifted. "You keep saying that like it's settled." "It is." Helena reached for the bread between them, tore off a piece and passed it his way. "Then I'll need to learn your ways." "You work like the ground's watching." "It is," he said. "It remembers everything you do to it." She smiled. "Is that how you are with people too?" He met her gaze. "Only the ones who matter." That night, he carried Andrew to the cot after Helena fell asleep in the chair with a book open on her lap. The baby didn't stir as Noah laid him down, pulled the quilt over his legs, and stepped back quietly. He looked once more at Helena, eyes closed, hair coming loose at her temple. Then he banked the fire, washed the bowls, and turned down the lamp. The house didn't feel borrowed anymore. It felt lived in, like it belonged to more than just one man's ghosts. By early July, the land had shifted. The cottonwoods along the creek had filled out thick with green, and the heat came earlier each morning, pressing down with a weight that made the air hum. Helena had taken to tying her hair up with a strip of muslin, and Noah had stopped wearing his vest, except for trips to the trading post. That morning she handed him a folded scrap of paper while he sat on the porch sharpening his draw knife. "I need your eye on this," she said. He set the blade down and opened it. The handwriting was hers, neat, slanted, deliberate. It was a list. Names, mostly. Mrs. Talbot, 2 boys, 4 shirts. Mrs. Green, dress hem. It ran down the page in quiet purpose. "You've been taking work," she nodded. "A few women east of the hills heard I could mend. One of them passed word to the others. They send what they can by their boys. I send it back with the seams straight. You didn't ask if it was all right." "I didn't think I needed to," she said. "We're eating from the same shelf, Noah. I wanted to earn my place here." He looked up at her. "You already did." Helena crossed her arms loosely. "I know I did. But I want to keep it steady." He folded the paper and handed it back. "Then I'll build you a proper table for it. You don't need to keep cutting thread at the kitchen bench." Her eyes softened. "You do that. I've still got maple planks from the old porch rail. I'll plane them smooth." Helena stepped back into the cabin, and he heard her humming something faint under her breath. It wasn't the same tune she used for Andrew. This one was older, slower. The kind someone might hum while stitching a name into a baby's blanket. Later that day, while Andrew napped beneath the window's shade, Helena brought out the small box she'd carried since Kansas. She hadn't opened it since she arrived. She sat at the table, unlatched the brass hook, and lifted the lid. Noah passed behind her, heading for the door, then paused. "That your sister's?" She nodded. "Ours, really." She kept the letters. I kept the photographs. Inside were brittle envelopes, brown lace, a tintype of 2 girls standing in front of a clapboard house. One had her hands folded, the other a slight tilt to her chin. "That you on the left?" he asked. "I was 15. She set the photograph aside and pulled out something wrapped in blue checked cloth, a small silver rattle. She turned it in her hand once, then offered it to him. It was supposed to be hers, for when she had children. He took it gently. "You want Andrew to have it, I don't know," she said. "Part of me wants to keep it untouched, like it still belongs to her." Noah handed it back. "Then leave it wrapped. You'll know when it's time." She tucked the cloth back into the box and closed the lid. "You always say the right thing and never too much of it. I've had a lot of quiet to practice in." They stood there a moment, the weight of memory sitting clean between them. Then Andrew stirred and whimpered, and Helena crossed to lift him before his cry could rise. By dusk, Noah had begun shaping the maple. The plane hissed along the wood, shavings curling like ribbon at his boots. Helena stood nearby, watching. "You learned this from your father?" she asked. "My brother, mostly. After Pa's back gave out, it was just us boys building fences and fixing tack. He was better at it than me." "You talk about him like he's still near." Noah paused, looking past her toward the edge of the pasture. "He's buried up there, just past the elm. I keep the stone clean." "I'd like to bring him flowers sometime," she said. He nodded once. "He'd like that." Helena leaned on the fence. Andrew balanced against her hips, swaying with the rhythm of the wind. "You ever think about more?" she asked. "Children, a whole table full." He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quiet. "I used to. Then I thought the wanting would go away if I didn't speak it. And now," he looked at her, really looked, "now I think I'd give anything to hear you call this home." Her throat worked once before she answered. "I've been calling it that for weeks. Just hadn't said it out loud." The last light caught in her hair, and Andrew reached up to tug at a loose strand. She laughed, soft and full, and Noah felt something shift and ache, leaving the body after too long held. That night, after the lantern was turned down and Andrew slept sound beside the cot, Helena stepped to the open door where Noah stood. "I've been thinking," she said, voice low. He turned, waiting. "You don't have to sleep alone, not if you don't want to." He didn't move toward her, not yet. "You sure?" She stepped closer. "I've never been more." He held her eyes a moment longer, then offered his hand, not grasping, just open. She took it. And with that, Helena Ward stepped fully into the life she'd been walking toward all along. By mid-August, the grass along the ridge had browned to gold, and the air carried the smell of ripening chokecherries. The heat had broken just enough to let the days stretch without tension, and the nights cooled enough for sleep to come easy. Helena laid the last hem of a dress across the back of the rocking chair as Noah came in, dust on his sleeves and a small splinter in his palm. "You let that sit too long," she said, nodding to the red line rising from his thumb. He held it out without protest. "Fence post split." "I didn't feel it when it happened." She took his hand and turned it toward the light. "You never do until it's done with you." He watched her thread the needle and dip it through the flame to clean it. Her hands worked with practiced calm, but her brow furrowed softly as she picked the splinter out. When it was done, she wrapped the fabric strip neatly around his hand. "There," she said. "Try not to tear it open again." He flexed his fingers once. "You've a way of making things stay put." She looked up at him. "You always this steady when things are easy." "I wouldn't know," he said. "These days are the first ones that haven't been hard in a long while." She didn't answer, but her hand lingered in his. He turned it gently and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. That evening, Andrew toddled his first few steps from the hearth to the leg of the table. Helena clapped once, startled, and Noah leaned down to catch the boy before he toppled forward. His hands caught around Andrew's middle just as he tipped sideways. "Looks like he's tired of waiting," Noah said. "He's never waited a day in his life," Helena replied, crouching beside them. "Not since he came into this world." They sat together on the floor, the boy between them, patting his hands against Noah's boot. Helena's skirt brushed Noah's knee, and he didn't move away. After Andrew was down for the night, Helena stepped into the doorway and looked out across the pasture. The sky was clear, stars thick overhead. The lantern inside burned low, casting soft gold across the floorboards. "I had a dream once," she said as Noah stepped beside her. "That I'd keep a small garden, that I'd make bread with flour I didn't have to ration. That I'd wake up next to someone who didn't leave." He leaned against the post. "And now, I've got a garden," she said. "A child who laughs in his sleep, and a man who sharpens his tools at sunrise and brings in wood before I ask." Noah looked at her closely. "That enough for you?" She reached out, fingers brushing the edge of his jaw. "It's more than I ever let myself expect." He took her hand and pressed it to his chest. "Then let's keep it." The following week, they rode into town with Andrew tucked between them on the saddle. The preacher's wife had offered to mind the boy while they stepped inside the chapel. They spoke their vows with no one else in the pews, just the preacher, Helena's steady gaze, and Noah's hand wrapped firm around hers. No rings, only words. That was enough. They rode back in silence, the quiet kind that settles between people who no longer wonder what comes next. At the cabin, Helena lifted Andrew into her arms and let him press his cheek against her shoulder. Noah took the reins to the barn and lingered there a moment, hand on the mare's neck. Later, as dusk fell, they sat on the back step with the boy asleep and the wind rustling through the dry stalks of corn. Helena leaned into Noah's side. "You know," she said softly, "I think we could build something more." He turned his head. "What kind of more?" She touched her palm to his chest. "A family that doesn't break, ground that feeds us, a life that doesn't need running from." He kissed the top of her head. "Then we'll build it." They stayed there long after the sky darkened, the land still warm beneath their feet, and the cabin behind them filled with the kind of quiet that only ever meant peace. Years passed, but their rhythm never broke. Noah built her a sewing table that sat near the window, and Helena grew daisies along the edge of the porch. Andrew grew taller, steady-legged and sharp-eyed, and never once cried out in the night again. In time, they added 2 more children, both born strong under Helena's calm hands and Noah's watchful ones. Neighbors came to call, bringing bread and news, and stayed longer than they meant to. Folks said the place had a feel about it, steady, warm, like something planted deep and cared for right. And it was, because Noah Newton and Helena Ward had not found each other by chance or by luck. They had found each other by grit, by choice, and by the quiet kind of love that grows when no one is watching, and they never let it go.